Welcome to Talking Tactics, a show about insights and the results they ignite. I'm Safaniya Stevenson, a brand strategist and cultural analyst in the wonderful world of marketing. And every other week, I dig into the aha moments that changed everything for a higher education marketer. Each episode of Talking Tactics starts with an insight, following it from observation to action that created measurable results. We're talking about the breakthrough moments that happen with scrappy resources, and sometimes we'll even explore the tactics that, crashed and burned, because there's also value in trial and error. Your next innovative idea might be hiding in your data, your hallway conversations, or your own gut instinct. So let's get to it. All right, everyone, I am super excited for today's episode because personally, it is a full circle moment for me. Today's guest, besides being the Chief Development Officer for Gaston Community College, also has the title of being one of my first best friends in college. So help me in welcoming Mr. Dan the Man Freeman. Welcome to the show, Dan.
I am grateful to be here. Thanks for having me, Safo.
Yeah, it's funny how we met at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and now we're both in higher ed.
I know. It's crazy. I think about it all the time. I'm still in a fantasy football league with all of our friends from the learning community that I was part of freshman year.
Right. We've come a long way since introducing each other to pepperoni pineapple pizza is what I'll say.
Yes, correct.
Good times, good times. So here we are in higher ed, and you are in development now at Gaston Community College. And, I know that you're fairly new in the role, but not new to North Carolina, not new to giving. So when you got to Gaston, what were some of those misconceptions that you experienced with this disconnect between community college alumni and their connection to maybe like a state institution that they would later go on to?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and it was brought up in the interview process for me, was how do we create alumni affinity, or how do we bring alumni affinity back to the top for focus? And that was one of the really big things. And a lot of the work I've done in my career is be a builder in terms of giving. I go into situations where I'm making cold phone calls, emails, LinkedIn outreach, all these different things just to get a hold of people who maybe haven't engaged with us. So when I came into this role, I wanted to do some research and kind of look into what we had. And really for me, it was that first piece about there's this misconception about affinity to community colleges for their alumni. And I think something important to mention too is I've had this conversation with other people who work in community colleges. Alumni is a very interesting term because community colleges have trades, they have workforce development, they have certifications, they have skills courses, and they have what would be considered a general alumni, which is curriculum courses, where you receive a degree after. So to me, I thought that was exciting because that broadens the pool of who is an alumni.
To tap into, yeah.
Exactly. And I look at it as we're just looking for people that had a great experience here and think of it as their jumping off point, whether to a four-year institution, straight into the workforce, as a way to upskill themselves, or as a way to move forward in their career.
What was that aha moment? Like as you were onboarding and doing your listening tour, I know you mentioned a lot about like your first couple of months there. You were literally just having lunches, going out and visiting people. What was that aha moment that really kind of solidified that you were on the right path of this new engagement strategy and how you were going to reach out to folks?
It wasn't even from me, to be honest. And I'll tell you, I had this conversation with a group yesterday, a marketing kind of startup at UNC Charlotte. I had coffee with them yesterday. And the thing for me was there were two instances sort of early on in my tenure here at Gaston College. And one of our deans had said, hey, I met this guy in Rotary. He's an alum. He wants to talk to you about his experience and he wants to support the college. And then I had another person do the same thing with another alum. And I went and met with both of these individuals. One of them, their business is about to hit 50 years in business.
Wow.
And he's an incredibly interesting individual who's done some really cool stuff. And the other individual, just as interesting in real estate, and they're in what we would call these prime years beyond their wealth building years. Like they're in their prime years of now figuring out what they want to do with their wealth.
Yeah, and how to
And
give back and support.
exactly, right. And we're the first people that they came to. We didn't solicit them. We didn't do this or that. And really, before I started, you could probably say 6 to 8 months ago, before I started really with some outreach to these alums over the past 25 years who we have contactable information for, these people just found us. That made the light bulb go off for me. And this is a question that I've asked a few people now is, these people come to us without any provocation. There have to be so many more people that had such a good experience that are just, in other words, sitting there waiting
Yeah.
for us to find them. And how do we get in front of those people? What medium is it? What is it that's going to get us in front of them? And instead of them eventually saying, hey, you work at Gaston College, connect me with the person who can make a difference, I want us to be the catalyst that says
Yeah.
that they see. And they're like, oh, I had such a great time at Gaston. I've really wanted to do XYZ. I'd love to learn about this program or this or make a difference here.
So when you were going through, I know one of the things that we talked about was kind of that misconception leading to a cycle where the development staff may have been light in engaging alumni because there was the misconception. And then the catch 22 of that is like alumni wasn't engaging because they were like, well, Gaston hasn't reached out to me. So I guess I'm not important. I'm not needed here. How did you start to break that cycle, and kind of what were some of those first steps you took to prove that community college alumni actually do want to connect with their community college alma mater as well?
You're talking about kind of that negative feedback loop that I
Yeah.
think about, right? Is that when I came in, they were like, we need you to help us engage alumni. And I said, okay, I'm going to use all these skills I've used in previous roles at all these other places. And it's this loop of, as you said, we're not reaching out to them. They're not hearing from us. They're thinking, well, they don't really care about me. So then they're not reaching out to us. And then we're not reaching out to them. And it's just this terrible loop. So one of the first things I did is I reached out to one of our internal departments who collects all this information. And I said, is it feasible for me to gather contact information, whatever's, allowable, for alums? And I did a 5-year period,
Mhm.
and it was 20 to 25. And they sent me the information, and I said, oh, okay, like there's pretty good information here. And they said, yeah, if you go back too far, they're gonna have their college email instead of their personal email because it wasn't specified for them previously. So started working my way back, ended up getting this collection of about 25 years of data from 2000 to 2025.
Yeah.
And it had about 17,000 people on it. And I thought to myself, okay, I've done newsletters at Asheville and Charlotte. I've created Facebook groups. I've done all these different things. I've gone on LinkedIn and gone to our LinkedIn page and looked through alumni there. And what I did is I thought I have to get in front of these people. And the
Right.
easiest and most affordable way to start for me was just a physical mailer. The physical mailer is not going to tell me who opens it, right? And I may not get any gifts, but we'll also have an idea of how many bounce back, right? Because our address is the return address.
Right.
So that was the first touch for me. And we did that. And we did not get many returns at all.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of like a feeler, right? I was throwing something out in the water. And then my second thought was, email is so cluttered right now, but if I can get anything,
As someone who has like I know that you saw me post on Instagram, like as somebody that has like 5,000 unread emails. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's email is such a happy, decluttered space for me. I have no clue what you mean.
Well, to that point, right? Like I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I can get over a 20% open rate, that's a win, right? Because we've
Right.
never done this. We've never even sent anything to them via these emails. And I collected up, ended up being 17,000 and change. And obviously each time,
Yeah.
there's some new bounce backs from people's mailboxes being full and, some people unsubscribe, etc. So I'll tell you this, I started sending out our events because we had a signature event that we'd never had before. And I was like, this is a great opportunity to just share with alums like what's going on. Just that first piece and invite them back to an event that's going to support the college. And since that first email, I've probably sent out, if you count the resends to the non-openers that I do on every email, I've probably sent out 30 to 35 mass emails. As you know, as you go through that, it refines, right? It refines the people who want to hear. So right now, I have a list of almost exactly 14,000 alumni, contactable alumni. My average open rate over the last 6 to 8 months is over 50%.
Wow. Wow. And it's funny to think about, the original problem state was no one wants to engage. No one wants to hear
Mm-hmm,
from us. And now
mm-hmm.
you've got the data to say otherwise.
And that to me was for someone who loves data himself, like that was the big thing for me. People want to hear from us. They're
Yep.
opening things. And what I've started doing is I've gone from which the first content was just like, here are events we have going on to now our marketing department does alumni spotlights and we don't have an external email. So I've been taking those alumni spotlights,
Hmm.
putting them into this newsletter, just copying and pasting. And I'll include, one or two other little things if we do have an event going on or just an update about something or another. And I send it out and people open it. And to me, that in itself is all I need to say that people want to hear from us. I've invited, we had a foursome in our golf classic this past spring of alumni. They
Hmm.
were so excited to be a part of it. They were like, we didn't even know this was going on. They're all local.
Yeah.
And they were like, this is so great. I'm really interested. If you do something like this again, let me know. We have our run coming up this Saturday, tomorrow, the 27th. And we had some sponsors that donated some things and I sent them out to alumni. I mean, I was getting, 100 unique clicks on the form for people to fill it out to get a free entry. And we have a decent amount of alumni. We've never done that, right? So we have alumni running, and I'm just thinking, I need to find ways to engage them and show them that we're here because we need advocates.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And I think one of the unique things too, and it's something that is unique and differentiating from community colleges, a lot of folks from community colleges are still in the area. So like
Mm-hmm.
something like a run or something like an in-person event, these they're already there. They just need to be aware of kind of like what's going on. So one of the things that you and I talked about kind of as we were talking about this concept and kind of tactics and things that you were using to engage
Mm-hmm.
this audience, you talked a lot about something you called curiosity content. And I think that's an intriguing like concept of like bucketing it as curiosity content. Can you tell me what curiosity content is and what the practical use is when you're using it for development?
I want to preface this by saying when I was younger, I used to speak quick and not think.
What?
not actions, only speaking. And as I've gotten older, I really love to process things and kind of take a second. And I'd rather reply to something hours later or the next day
Yeah.
than make a quick response on something.
We love
So
growth. That's beautiful, Dad. This is a safe space. We love growth.
now I think I'm a little too slow sometimes. Like I want to be quicker. So both ends of the spectrum, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
working my way better. But I say that to say this curiosity content for me is I have conversations with people I mentor and such, and their supervisors will tell them, okay, you need to prep this material, you need to learn this about them, you need to do this, that, and the other. And my thought process is always you should have almost no idea what to expect when you go into a meeting. You
Mm,
should plan to be there, plan to know this person is maybe this year alumni or where they live. Pretty simple things, but you can't go in there with any preconceived notions because you will not get the organic, most meaningful information if you're trying to direct the conversation.
right.
So I'm always going into these conversations with the eye of, I need to listen so hard that they forget I'm there. And it's just like them talking to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to ask so few questions that I can get them to continually ask and answer more questions like they're talking to themselves. So,
Yeah.
for me, the really those first questions I love to ask, and I've used this throughout my decade plus of fundraising, is tell me how we got here. Tell me about your experience at the institution. Tell me about your career. And then tell me what makes you tick, right? Because for me, I want to know how we got here because that's a really important one. Because that kind of sets the scene for us. Like, why are we here? And that allows me to talk a little bit and just introduce myself and tell them why it's important for me to be here one on one with them.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is tell me about your experience at the institution. And that elicits memories, right? And we know memories elicit emotions, and emotions are the true identifiers. And those are really what create a special conversation. And then I talk about careers because some people have really interesting careers. They can relate it back to the institutional memories that they just spoke about. So they're fresh. And I also love business entrepreneurship, knowing people's, kind of backgrounds and careers.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that's really important to me is I ask them, what makes you tick? Do you like to travel? Do you volunteer at other nonprofits? Do you like to play sports? Do you like art? Because for me, that question brings everything into it. They could tell me about their institutional memories, they could tell me about their career, but when they tell me really what makes them tick, I can bring in some of those things that I listened to them say earlier and say, oh, you know what? That makes total sense. You mentioned this professor, this art class, or you used to go on a ski trip with your friends, or you used to skateboard. That makes total sense why you did this or your kids do this. And it's those kinds of active listening and those connections and that full circle is what not only makes the conversation, but it allows me insight into who they are. Because I believe that in our role, when we're trying to connect people with areas of fulfillment that match what we're doing at the college and what really makes them tick, those are the most important connections
Mm-hmm.
because it's not on a work level.
Right.
It's on a personal level. And if you want complete buy-in, then you have to get someone, you have to you have to learn and connect with something that someone has on a deeper level
Right.
versus something a day-to-day career.
Let's take a quick pause for a word from our sponsor. Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 33 to 35% email open rates. The impact? Personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. Yeah, I love that. And I think, one of the things that we also talked about too is just it felt so one way where these
Mm-hmm.
emails or these social media posts or these events were just kind of very soapbox-ish, and
Mm-hmm.
this curiosity content that you've developed, it is asking questions. It's in an email asking for a response, or we'd love to hear from you, or you setting up time and giving people a platform to share. So I would also like to know, do you have like any specific examples of that content or a situation where you're like, man, this is the best outcome I could have ever thought of this content having?
One of the reasons these become so special is because, especially in not just over the phone, but over the email, which is really tough because things can be taken a certain way. So I really try to hold my own voice and be pretty neutral, but be very inquisitive, is I draft my emails in the sense of the subject has to be something interesting for them to see. And if it's from their college or someone they haven't heard from in a long time, that usually seems to work well.
Right.
In their body, the first thing that I usually do is I usually put it on them and I thank them for something or another, or I acknowledge something that they're connected to. Then I do a quick intro of myself because I know they're going to look at that and say, "Oh, thanks. Okay, who's this?"
Who is
And
this?
then and I introduce myself, but then I put it right back to them and I give them the power. And
Right.
that's always the key, right? In curiosity content, I'm curious about them. And when I give them, when I ask them the questions, they have the power to determine where the conversation goes. And that allows them to have a view of me of being vulnerable, that I don't need control,
Yeah.
but also that they have the confidence. Like I'm just like, hey, talk. Tell me what's up. But I think experience wise, there are a lot of different scenarios. I mean, I think back to a conversation with someone, not like groundbreaking, but really interesting. Some months ago, my colleague brought this individual up again recently. I had reached out to him because he listens to a radio station on the campus, and we didn't have any information on him. And I called him and I was like, hey, I just want to thank you. Like, do you have any time to catch up? Love to hear about you. You've been giving for this many, for this number of years. You've been giving this consistently. And you're just far enough out that I know the signal does not get to you. So how do you listen to it? Right? Like you're
Yeah.
beyond the frequency. So how do you listen to it? Because
He's right at the county line with like a
right?
hand crank radio and
Like, or he lived somewhere and listened to it and then kept listening to it online on our live stream.
yeah.
So I start listening to him and he's like, oh yeah, we have this many acres. We have a winery. I did this really successful business for 20 plus years. I have a homestead. I have these beautiful gardens. I have this, that, and the other. And I would have never known. And he's up in the mountains.
Yeah.
And I was like, this has to be the most beautiful place. And he was like, come on up. Let me know when you want to come up. Like you can come see my garden. We can talk about this.
Yeah.
And for me, there's so many of those conversations, but I just love it because it's like you're opening a new book. I'm listening to a new podcast and I'm just like, wow, I didn't expect that. Like that was really surprising. That person let me into their world. We talked about all the stuff. I've got notes for myself to make sure that we don't forget about this individual and who they are and what they've done. And they were just a really great person. And to me, those conversations are not groundbreaking, but the more I have of them, the more I see a pattern and
Yeah.
a consistency of these are really great people. I should continue to trust my gut and reach out to these people and just be curious about who they are and what they are.
And I mean, we talk all the time about how, I mean, if you have to think about it, I mean, we're still asking people to give significant amounts of money in a time where, financial and the stability of the world is questionable right now. So
Yeah.
like when you have imagine like even with that conversation you had with that guy, it's like, would you rather open up your wallet to your buddy who knows like all your favorite things, or would you rather open up your wallet like to a complete stranger? And I think that that's, the reality of situation of development and giving is we still have to get to know these people on a one-to-one level to make them feel seen. And again, he's not even in the community anymore, but he's actually expanding out. He's like, hey, you guys come to me and I'll show you what I've got going on over here. So that's pretty cool.
Those are great conversations. And I think to your point of what you said, I always tell people there's this idea that you can't be close with donors or you can't be vulnerable with donors. And I think that there may be a line. I think you have to understand who they are first.
Yeah.
And then figure out where that line is for each person, because people give to people they like, they give to people they trust. And would you trust someone if you didn't know anything about them?
No.
So I look at that like,
Absolutely not.
no, my son will come up sometimes in conversation. We'll talk about places I traveled. I was at a law firm this past week and spent an hour with this lawyer from the area. Again, didn't go to the college, but we talked about, scholarships in these places and what they do, and we talked about the house that the law office is in because it's
Hmm.
over 100 years old and how much I loved that. And for me, that's my way of saying, this is me telling you about myself without talking at you,
Right.
right? Like, I lived in a house when we were in Pennsylvania that was almost exactly 100 years old. I loved these certain features. So coming into this house, I love this house. I love everything about it. And then she started telling me about the owners. And then, I told her about a family member who had bought a house uh, almost 2 decades ago and redid it, and how their house was just as old. And this reminded me of their house and that feeling I would get in there. And it's it's not hard, but I think it's just
You do
it's
have
a
to be intentional about it. Curiosity is not a fast game. So I think that that says a lot about what goes into the process of setting aside time to develop like this curiosity content that you talk about, or even just having those curious conversations with prospective donors. You got to slow it down.
yeah, and I've had this conversation a lot really recently. Um, when people don't understand fundraising, I think it really comes down to, in our world, there are people who talk too much and people who don't talk enough. There's people who don't listen at all, and there's people who listen a lot. And fundraising is so contextual and
Hmm.
so nuanced. You can't talk about something and just give a one word answer or a one sentence.
Yeah.
These conversations are meant to have a bunch of context and a bunch of nuance for where does it go next, and what did this conversation bring you, because someone may read those notes and be like, okay, great, but I look at those notes and I say, well, this is where I'm going to go next
Hmm.
because this is where they're leading me. But unlike, say, grants, right? Grants are black and white. You get the data, you write a story, you fill it out and submit it. There's an application deadline, right? There's a deadline when they're going to let you know if it's been awarded. Like, there are all these different things. It's very black and white, but individual giving and development is so nuanced and contextual. You don't know because you're working with people, and people are, every person's an individual. They're all different, and money is such a deeply rooted piece of people's beings based upon how they grew up and how they've lived their life, that informs the decisions they make. Some people are like, great, take it. Tax purposes. I knew I wanted to do this for a while. This is great timing. Other people are like, I need to go work with my estate planner. I need to think about it more. I remember I worked with someone at one of my previous institutions, and he was like, I want to make a gift. And we talked about the amount, and I believe at this time, it's one of my largest gifts. I think it's like top 3 or top 5. And I mean, it took us 6 months.
Yeah.
We ended up, like, we started and he was like, this is what I want to give. But it took us 6 months to work through the little details and the comfort pieces for him to feel good about it.
Also continuing to stay curious about him throughout that time, not just, oh, this is in the bag and it's just contractual. Now it's like, no, actually showing up and being that,
Yes.
making it about him, making it about his experience, and how the university can use it and benefit, how he can use and benefit. So like you said, it's not, again, key here is like curiosity and growth is slow work.
And you bring up a great point on that, because a lot of people could be great at curiosity content till they get the gift. And then a lot of them don't know what to do afterwards.
Hmm.
And it's not even that they don't know, we did in the giving world, it's stewardship, like that, that's the word. But everyone always drops the ball after the gift. So I love to pick it back up and go spend time with people. And I'm like, it doesn't matter that you gave the gift. We're so grateful for that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to change how I treat you. I'm coming back. We're still going to spend time together.
I'm
Like,
still coming to the mountains to try
right?
the winery.
Yeah, like and that's one of those things that really sets people apart. and sets development shops and fundraising apart.
Love that. Well, Dan, before we wrap up here, for someone who wants to incorporate curiosity content into their development strategies, where would you say they should begin?
Well, I want to start with this quote from a show that we have gotten into called Platonic. And that quote is, don't ask, don't get. So
Yeah.
I want to start with that. You don't ask questions, you don't get answers. You don't ask for donations, you don't get them. There's a lot of different places. There's a lot of professional organizations. I always think to myself, the first thing you need to do is if you give to a nonprofit, if there's a nonprofit in your area that you love the mission for, reach out to them and just be like, hey, I'm interested in working in development. I'm interested in working in a nonprofit. I'm interested in XYZ. Can we talk about it? Can you tell me a little bit more? Because that's your first foray, right? That's the curiosity. You have to have it. You got to start with it. You have to be curious about something. And then the second piece I would say is, people can reach out to me. I have conversations with people all the time. Usually it's like family members or friends of people that I'm close with, like thought partners and former colleagues. They'll be like, hey, my sister or my friend wants to go into philanthropy. Like, can you talk to them about, translatable and transferable skills and where they should look and how they should approach it? And I have those conversations a lot. So, and I teach nonprofit management too. So people can reach out to me.
Okay.
And then I really think LinkedIn's pretty solid too. Like there is a lot of fluff. We both know that. But I think following you is really great on the marketing side, which is so much of philanthropy. But then I also think, I usually repost a lot of stuff. You can find people through what I'm liking and commenting on LinkedIn. It's like in this book that I'm reading now from John Levy, and I think it's called You're Invited. One of the statistics in there says that everyone is only 3.8 degrees separation from who they want to speak to and who they need to speak to.
Yeah.
So you just got to keep asking.
Yeah. Cool. Well, you heard it here, folks. I'm expecting Dan to have like 400 to 400 emails.
Bring it on. I'm an executor.
He has offered up his personal fundraising training for curiosity content. So I expect everyone to be in his DM. So thanks for joining me today, Dan. I really appreciate all the insight. And as someone who is also naturally curious, this was something that really aligned with who I am as a marketer and how it can really help build and create those connections and create communities. So folks, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already a naturally curious person. So think about curiosity content and keep walking the walk and talking the tactics. Thanks for listening to Talking Tactics. If you want to try out the tactics you heard on today's show, you get a full 10 from me, and I would love to hear about how you made them your own. You can find me by searching Safaniya, Safaniya on LinkedIn. There's not many Safaniyas on there, so you'll be able to see me. And if you're enjoying Talking Tactics, please rate and review the show. The overachiever in me needs your feedback, and I'll certainly use it for confirmation or, optimization, depending on the review. And finally, if you just can't get enough great podcasts, the Enrollify Podcast Network delivers with an amazing selection of other marketing and admissions-based podcasts just for you. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com. See you next time.